But what we're going to do now is, especially talking about predicting these games, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to try our best to predict these games. I feel like I've had a decent season so far when it comes to my tips this year. I'm consistently going 5-4 at least. So if you take my bets, you're going to make money. So at the end of the day, it's not horrible. I'm probably not going to be winning our tipping competition as of now, but
in our little tipping competition that I kind of put together between you, me, myself, my good friend, and also
yes,
my
you,
co-host
me,
from my
myself,
other
and my
podcast.
friend. Yes.
You, me, my friend Brad,
There we go.
and another friend, a coworker of mine. I keep track of it. So I think what I'll do from starting next week, I will bring the overall records that we have to each and every one.
Okay.
Brad is winning, and Brad is winning quite handily.
Brad's having a good year.
I think he's got a 5 or 6 game lead.
Oh.
I think he had an 8-1. I think he had an 8-1 round a couple rounds ago. So he started off really, really well. So
my first round wasn't good.
It'll be interesting to see how this one goes.
Put me into a hole early, but
there was a few that didn't like.
Oh yeah, let's that's in the past. Let's go to the present because it's time to get our tip on. And starting us off is the game that I am so glad we get this out of the way nice and early around 6. Like, just get the Giants loss out of the way because there's no way I'm tipping them at this point. St. Kilda, even though I do have hope, I have more hope in this game than I have the last few rounds. But I just don't want to bet on them because they're not good.
I will tell you this. This one was much more intriguing because of Toby Green being back than if he wasn't. Like, if Toby Green wasn't playing in this game, this would be easy St. Kilda pit tip all day long. I seriously thought about this one because I thought they're going to get a bump from Toby Green. Yar playing in Canberra, which they usually tend to play Canberra really well. St. Kilda, I think, has been beneficial to with some opponents. I think they've matched up well against, and I think GWS. I think they're kind of feeling the heat a little bit. So we'll kind of see. I think you get a little more inspired GWS. I think this is a tight game. I think this is under 3 goals. I think this is going to come down to the fourth quarter. I think I'm going to tip St. Kilda, but this is my star. Watch this one because this is a potential upset that will not shock me if GWS wins this one. Like, this is the no surprise game. I think either team can win this one. I'm going to tip St. Kilda, but I think GWS is much more in this game than I think some people are giving them credit for.
I hope so. But going to this next one, it's happening early. My bold tip of the round is going to be the Western Bulldogs, the Adelaide Crows. 95% of tippers are taking the doggies in this one. Mark me down with the 5%. Let's go Crows, because what the doggies in their blowouts have come against easier teams. They've had a shaky season. The Adelaide Crows have had a couple good performances, and I definitely do think the Crows deserve to be underdogs in this game. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with the odds with the dogs being $1.24 and the Crows being above $4. I'm not. I think the Crows deserve a little bit more in this matchup. Am I off? Am I off on that?
I don't think you're off. I really took a look at this one because it's Mars Stadium in Ballarat is the only thing that I think is gonna make me lean. I'm gonna tip the doggies in this one.
You're not crazy for that. But it's
only because well, no. Listen here. If this game was in Adelaide, I'd seriously think about it because Adelaide plays the Adelaide Oval really, really well. But this is Mars Stadium, which most teams don't play at. Ballarat is where Mars Stadium is, and Western Bulldogs tend to play this stadium really, really well. The Crows are a young team. Can adverse effects being a country town game? You're not going to have a ton of fans there. I think this is going to kind of be a focus game. One of those. The other thing you look at too is that the Dogs are also without Lockie Hunter. Lockie Hunter stepped away for mental health, for family reasons.
All the good reasons to do so.
Yeah, and my thoughts are with him. Hopefully he comes back and he's able to play the game of footy. You never want to see that happen, but you respect and understand it. So there is a cog out of the Western Bulldogs midfield, but Adelaide is not a midfield that I sit there and that terrifies me. So I think the Western Bulldogs win this, but again, I think the Crows are competitive in this game. I think this is one of those that could come down late in the fourth quarter. I don't want it to be a blow. There's a possibility if the Dogs get going.
Oh yeah.
But I think the Crows have been pesky enough this year. I think I give them a sniff in this game to where they're in it for a lot longer than some are predicting. I think this is mid fourth quarter before the Doggies pull away. I think they win this by 2 or 3 goals, but
I like that.
I think the Crows are in this game.
I like that. The next one, we got the Port Adelaide Power take on the West Coast Eagles. And if there's any team you have a chance of getting your first win of the season against, it is definitely looking like the Eagles at this point, especially after the drubbing that Sydney gave them. Now, I am not sure about the odds on this. Another one where I'm not necessarily agreeing with the odds. I think the Eagles have a lot better chance in this one than people are giving them, especially with the poor play from Port Adelaide, but also the returns from some of the injuries with them. And if they're going to get going, they kind of have to get going with this one. And so I will tip the team that's kind of been bullied into the backed into the corner in the power. But I think this is a super close game with the Eagles.
I agree. This is a super close game, but I think there are more positive signs I took out of Port Adelaide's game against Carlton than I did West Coast.
Yeah,
they got Alir back. Alir. Well, here's the thing. Alir had trouble with Carlton.
Mm-hmm.
West Coast, Darling, and Kennedy, I don't think are as difficult of matchups because they're not as athletic, they're not as dynamic as Curnow and Mackay. So I think it's not as difficult to match up. Do I think Sydney was a little bit of a beneficial of some underdone superstars like Shuey and Kennedy? Yes and no, because I think they still played well. I think the issue was there was a lot of effort plays, like the one that I saw where Isaac Keeney ran by 5 West Coast players without a single one of them staying with him. And then he marks it 20 meters out and kicks an easy goal. I'm not sure where the headspace of the West Coast Eagles is right now. Port Adelaide, I think they're still focused. I think they've just been ruined by injuries, and Butters and Rosie went into the midfield and had great games against Sydney and against Carlton. And I think they're going to have another good game against a West Coast Eagles team I think is still vulnerable. There's still something not 100% right about the West Coast Eagles. I'm going to tip Port in this one, but I do think this one is close because you do have some superstar power with Shuey, with Kennedy, with Darling, with some of the guys that are there. So I think West Coast stays in this game. I think Port nips them late, but I think Port Adelaide gets off the schneid. They get a win, and hopefully that kind of writes their season a little bit, maybe kind of gets them on the right path. We'll have to see.
Now, this next one, this is going to be the second and the last underdog team to actually tip in this one, with Carlton taking on Fremantle at Optus. We all know that Freo is a good team, especially at Optus, but also I don't know. Sometimes I just have to kind of go with my gut a little bit. I'm not sure if my gut's right or wrong, but I have to trust it. I feel more confidence in Carlton than I do in terms of Fremantle right now. And when it comes to just, I don't know. It's something hard for me to describe. It's a very close game. 70% of people are tipping Fremantle in this one, though. That was more than I thought it was going to be. I'm gonna roll with the Blues. I'll roll with you, Carlton. Let's get those grand final tickets bought again.
All right, now this is the fun one because I'm the exact opposite. I trust Fremantle more than I trust Carlton because with Carlton, I still don't know if their defense is legit or not because they had that absolutely atrocious third quarter where Port came back. And I think Fremantle's playing better footy. I think Fremantle is much more structured. I think Mark Pitnett has a much more difficult matchup in this game against Sean Darcy than he did against 2 young players playing for the first time. And Carlton, one of the things that Carlton has built this winning streak on has been dominating in the center bounce and the center clearances. That's not going to be as easy when you've got a very good ruck in Sean Darcy. Fremantle plays Optus Stadium really well. I don't know how Carlton travels. I still am not 100% sure if Paddy Cripps is going to be back or not. Now, if he's back, how is he going to be underdone? If I'm the Carlton coaching staff, honestly, I keep Cripps out. Yes, this is a big game, but it's early in the season. This is only round 6.
If you lose here, it's not going to cost a final spot. It's probably not.
Exactly, and that's what I'm kind of saying. I'm going to tip Fremantle in this one because, like I said, I like the way Freo's playing. Defensively, they were really, really good. Yes, they did play Essendon, who has become a dumpster fire this season. I don't know why, but they have. So we'll really have to see. I trust Fremantle at home. I've seen them do it to better teams than this Carlton team, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
No offense to Carlton. I think they've won games against better teams than what Carlton is this year. So I'm going to tip Fremantle in this one at home to get the big win at Optus Stadium, and I think legitimize Fremantle as a finals team this year.
You know, and also just in regards to this one, it could just be my holding on to my feelings from the previous seasons. When it comes to my opinions about Fremantle, maybe that's a little nagging. This is a big. I think this is probably the game I'm looking forward to the most this round in terms of either team. Huge prove it status on the line. It could, in either winner could. It could be safe to cement them as a legitimate finals team. Of course,
especially if this is a close game too, because it could legitimize. It actually could legitimize both of them.
Yeah,
like legitimately, if you look at it. Carlton goes on the road and only loses by 5 to Freo, or even flip-flop the other way around. Carlton wins by 5 at Freo, or Freo wins by 5 at home. I think it legitimizes both of them because if they both are legit teams, they're both finals teams. That's a finals caliber type of atmosphere that you get that game. It legitimizes both teams coming out of this game, even if you lose it. So I'm with you. This is a game that's tasty. I cannot wait for this one. I'm debating if I want to get up to watch this live or if I want to watch it on tape delay. We'll have to see.
Right.
4:40 a.m. my time here, so I'm probably going to end up watching this tape delay. But this one looks like an absolute dandy.
Mm-hmm. Now we get to this stretch where, honestly, the last 5 games I have no problem. Like it really wasn't that hard for me to tip. I don't know if are we kind of the same boat with this one where the first 4 there's definitely an argument to either side, and this one, especially the next 3, I just I'm having a hard time.
Go right down the line. Geelong should beat North Melbourne.
Yep.
Brisbane should beat the Gold Coast, and the Melbourne Demons should beat Richmond. Am I not jumping off too high a level?
No, I don't think that's a hot take right there. And then especially, I guess it does get a little bit iffier when you get into the last 2 with the Sydney and Hawthorn, Collingwood, and Essendon. Now with these 2,
all right, let's jump to that then.
Yeah, let's get there. We don't need to talk about.
We're pretty sure Geelong should beat North. Yeah.
If either of those teams lose those games, that is beyond embarrassing, essentially, unless something. I guess the Gold Coast.
The only one I'm intrigued. The only one of those those 3, the only one I'm actually intrigued is I want to see how Richmond handles Melbourne. I legitimately want to see that one. I think Geelong is so good they'll beat North Melbourne. I think Brisbane Q Clash is going to be interesting. I think that's a competitive game a lot more than some people give it credit for. I think Gold Coast stays in it. I think Brisbane's just got a little too much for it.
I think Gold Coast stays
Brisbane
3-4 goals behind, most of the game. They're kind of there, but also it's a good lead for Brisbane. It's one of those things. It's not going to be a blowout.
Well, I think competitive wise, that's probably going to be the most competitive game. That's probably going to have the closest score line, but I still think Brisbane wins it. I'm intrigued by the last of that 3 with Melbourne Richmond, because I want to see how Richmond handles Melbourne, because this is. You have the previous dynasty against the new dynasty. How does that match up?
Yeah.
It's very fascinating. I think Melbourne wins this one. I think Melbourne is just absolutely elite right now. I think Richmond is still out to see whether they want to be a good team or not. Exactly. Well, they're good. I just don't think they're not at that. They're a couple of levels below Melbourne.
They're not flat contenders, right?
I think that'll be a fascinating one. The one down in the next one down in Tassie, Hawthorn Sydney. I think is going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are tipping Sydney on this one just because they're seeing Sydney's ball movement, how they kind of dismantled the West Coast. I think this is a barn burner just because Hawthorn is playing a style of footy that they really, really, it's very tough, it's very competitive, it's very bring your mouth guard as
they kind of brought
several
this in.
Have liked to mention.
Very similar to what they ended last season on, where they're just they're probably not going to be favorites, but also and they've also taken a step up from last year as well, because last year they were staying in games but weren't winning. Now they're staying in games and winning games that they might not necessarily should. So I think this is a huge threat to the Sydney Swans. I'm still going to tip them, but Hawthorn I could definitely see them pulling this off and making a statement.
This is one of those. It was kind of like both Hawthorn and North Melbourne really did this last year. Is that if you're going to beat them, you got to earn it.
Yeah,
You have to earn it. They're not going to give it to you.
it's
They're
not the
not going
ruse.
to roll over. They're not just going to fall flat because you're a better that you're a better team. We'll say that with air quotes there. I think Sydney wins this, but I think this is a tough, physical, competitive game. I think this is gonna come down to goal accuracy. I think Sydney has been more goal accurate this year than Hawthorn has. And Hawthorn, I think they did have an injury bug pop up of one of their players earlier today. Let's see if I can pull up who that guy is, because it just popped out like couple hours ago that one of the Hawthorn players is going to be unavailable.
Technically not breaking news this week, but still kind of somewhat breaking news. I don't know how you want to word that one. It's not.
I think it's Harris, but it was an injury that has come out in the last like 24 hours. That will be that he will not be able to play in that game, which I don't know if it's one of those that's it's the make or break. It's going to absolutely end Hawthorn's chances of winning, but it's definitely it's a hit in a spot that I think is actually that is going to affect the side a little bit. I don't think it's a death nail side. I'm going to tip Sydney in this one, but I think this is a tough competitive game. I'm going to be nervous this entire game. I just know it. I know I'm going to be nervous because this Hawthorn team is a tough physical footy team. It's going to take a lot to get the W on this one.
Not going to be as easy as beating West Coast, that's for sure. But in this last one, we got the Magpies and the Dons. Would love nothing like a little Anzac Day rivalry, right? Nothing like it. Don't they bust out the Rose Jumpers?
Yep, they'll have the special poppy jumpers this year. Yeah. This year they're not clashing as the same colors. This year Collingwoods are white, Essendon's are black,
last
so we don't have to worry about the color. That was quite the interesting clash there. So I'm going to tip Collingwood in this one. Too. I think, like I said a few bits ago, Essendon has become a dumpster fire, unfortunately, which is hard to say because they were the darlings of last year's season.
I loved them last year. I was a huge fan. I root for them.
Well, you're not the only one. There's a lot of people that were enamored by them, and they just have not started well. The injuries that have come have just been in detrimental places, with Jake Stringer being down, Zach Merritt, and then just the lack of effort. And I hate saying that about footy players, in their midfield was really noticeable in their last game, and they cannot. Collingwood is up and about. They've got their tails up. I think they're in this game. Essendon's got to have more of an effort, or this is going to be a long season for the Bombers in their 150th season. It's an absolutely the worst possible time to get a lackluster season under their belts is when you have a big milestone season. So I have the Collingwood Magpies, but again, Anzac, to all of our Australian listeners, again, this is such a cool thing. I wish that some kind of Veterans Day type of special series would be started in an American sport, because it's such a cool thing where they play the last call and everybody's silent and everybody's there. It's just such a cool environment. It's a cool
goosebump moment.
I cannot. Oh yes, It is. It's one of those. You may not be a Carlton or a Collingwood or an Essendon supporter, but you almost want to go to an Anzac game because it's got so much rich history to it. So I'm excited for that. So it'll be fun on a Monday over here. So
as much as I hate tipping against a team with the great one known as Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody playing footy, I have to go against him at this point until Essendon shows me sign of life. And if they beat Collingwood, then cool. I'm okay with being wrong with that because they're one of the teams I never complain when Essendon wins, but also I just don't see that happening in the future here.